to announce our keynote speaker and activist Lauren Jauregui. This amazing award-winning artist is ready to enter this new phase of her career with new music on the horizon and an album in the works. Outside of the studio, Jauregui has spent much of her career engaging with her fans on a variety of social and global issues, using her social media platforms to highlight pressing issues the youth faces today. With over 14 million combined followers, actively engaging across all social media platforms, Jauregui understands the power of her voice as a young member of society. With that, please welcome the incredible Lauren Jauregui. Lauren, if you could, the fellow Lauren, could you kindly turn on your camera?
Yeah, can you guys see me and hear me?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, it's
Lauren.
so nice to meet you.
Hi,
I can basically hear the applause. Even the webinar can't hold back our excitement. So thank you so much for joining us. I want to say again how excited we are to have you. And now with that, I will turn off my camera and leave you to provide us on guidance in our search and mission throughout this whole summit. Why should young people get civically engaged and vote?
All right. Well, I think one of the most important reasons why you need to be getting involved is because, well, I mean, things are the way that they are right now. I'm sure many of you are probably sitting at home kind of confused, kind of concerned about everything that's going on. And voting, for me anyway, because it's different for everyone, but it's a civic duty. You know what I'm saying? It's a right that we have right now. That to me is not the end all be all of how we're going to get to where we want to go, where we want to progress, but it is an important part of making sure that you put in leaders into positions. You put in leaders, like you, the people, put leaders into positions of power so that they have your interest at heart. I think what we all see with politics a lot is that these people have separate interests, and we see that happening again and again, especially the youth, who are quite usually ignored as far as like what we need and our futures, especially when it comes to climate change. So voting and being engaged civically just helps give you a voice in the process of making sure that your leaders are representative of your beliefs. Is that where do I keep going?
You can keep on talking. If you'd like, we could just jump into the Q&A session. Does that sound good, or do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind. Just for all of you guys listening, I guess one of the most important things that I feel like you need to know, again, you guys are the youth, right? So most of y'all either can't vote this year or are voting for the first time this year, probably, right? So one of the key elements to being civically engaged is being educated. And that's what I love about what you were talking about earlier, of just the process is not just, oh, I'm going to go vote. You know, there's so much information out there about voting, what propositions are going to be on your ballot, who the people are, all the different positions that are running. And, you know, we kind of get into this place where they tell us that the president, or it seems like the president is the only one who's important when it comes to decision making and everything. But when you really look at government and how it's broken down in the United States, the president is the executive branch, right? So they're one branch of the three-part system that we have. And that is federally. So federal means national. It means it's gonna go to everybody, right? The rules that are made, the policies that are made, whatever it is, it's gonna go nationwide. Then you have local officials. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but during the pandemic, you know, a lot of the policy that different states are exercising in the case of you know, safety, they have to do with local officials, the local mayor, the local commissioners, the local judges. And so this year on this ballot, there are, again, more than just the president is up for re-election. There are so many important positions that you need to educate yourself about. Because to be honest, I didn't even know. Like, I didn't even know. When I first went in to vote in 2016, that was my first time voting. I saw the ballot. I knew exactly who I was voting for president. And then I looked at everything else and I was like, I didn't know that there was a lot of other people here. Like, what? Who are these people? So I just kind of went down the list and I just voted for all of the female Democrats that I saw, right? Because in my mind, they're the most progressive. That's just me. But then I realized in retrospect, like, that is not how I can just be showing up to a ballot. These decisions that are made, these people that are put into these positions of power, they're very important. They're the ones who collect the tax money and allocate that to wherever they see fit. And what happens is, if you have politicians in power who have lobbyist money in their pockets, right? Lobbyists is another word you got to look up if you don't know what that is. But basically, they're people who pay money for certain laws to be passed, right? So if you have people funding a campaign, right, without you knowing, because you don't know anything about who's funding what, and you have special interests going into, like, corporate dollars going into politics, 9 times out of 10, those politicians' agendas are going to align with who's giving them money, not necessarily the people's interests. And therefore, it is extremely important to be mindful of who it is that you're putting into these offices locally, because local officials affect your life personally, affect your family's life personally, and affect your communities personally. Again, when we're talking about school safety, when we're talking about climate change, when we're talking about funding for schooling, because like they were saying earlier, low income scenarios have much less access to resource. And essentially, everything is not isolated. Everything is connected, right? So every single part of the government and every single piece works for the whole. So if you have a certain part of your community that's suffering more than another part of your community, there's going to be imbalance that usually leads to things like crime rates rising and theft. And those kinds of things that we all fear and that we all want to avoid, right? We want high literacy rates in our country. We want kids to be reading, writing, going to school, right? We want our leaders to pay attention to the very real imminent threat of climate change. And again, it's not even just climate change, it's our extractive energy. It's human beings taking from the earth what they cannot replace. And that causes a shift in temperatures, a shift in how many storms we're seeing. There's like 5 cyclones in the Atlantic. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not normal. All these fires, not normal. So we have to just be mindful again of, it's not just a presidential election. This is about your local leaders as well, especially in Florida. We need environmental protections for our waters. There's no question about that. But is the current administration and the current people in office even thinking about that? No, quite honestly. I went to the budget meetings. Trust me, they're really not thinking about it. So the more you get involved and the more you realize this and the more you educate yourself about all of the different candidates, because that's another thing. When you're voting this year, you can't just vote via party. That's something that I've been saying a lot. You can't be voting based off of your party or your parents' party or whoever. Democrats and Republicans alike are politicians. And we all know what politicians are, right? So you have to be mindful of who you're voting for, what their character is like, who is funding their campaign, and what do these people intend to do for your community? Those are the questions that you need at the forefront of your criteria of who it is that you're going to end up checking in that ballot box. Because if that's not what you're thinking about, you're more likely to go in there and just kind of be like, I don't really know who this person is. Trust me, I've been there, and it makes you feel a little helpless. It makes you feel a little bit like, oh my God, do I not know what's going on? So that would be my advice. Educate yourself about your local officials and get involved. That's it. I'm done.
It's actually so inspiring. Thank you so much for the incredible speech. I really loved how you touched upon local and state elections, because there seems to be a gap when people don't understand that those are so important. Everyone thinks about, oh, presidential election, but we have local officials that if you don't want to choose them, then we're going to get stuck with different kinds of people that you might not like. And I really enjoyed how you talked about and highlighted literacy rates, because there is such a disparity, especially in Florida. And it shouldn't be a thing. We should all
It really shouldn't be a thing. If we want to talk about a great country, right? When we talk about great countries, I think that there's a huge misconception right now about what it means to be great. And we've been taught as a society and the youth that to be great means to be rich. It means to have a lot of money, a lot of wealth, a lot of possessions. and a lot of kind of stuff to show off at the end of the day. Because all of this stuff, all of the stuff that you see celebrities with, all of the, all of that stuff, that's all an illusion. All right. That's all an illusion. All the money in this country pretty much is fake numbers at the end of the day, just being very real. So an economy is necessary for a quote unquote continued functioning society. But there are many different ways to look at an economy. And the GDP of a nation, the gross domestic product, how much money we generate as a country, is not, to me, indicative of a great country, because that money can be coming from anywhere. Like in the United States, $1 billion, we have $1 billion human sex trafficking industry. And I know that's kind of heavy, but you have to understand that that $1 billion industry contributes to our great GDP. You know what I'm saying? We sell the most weapons in the world. That contributes to our GDP, right? So what makes us great is essentially things that don't align with us morally. I like to think that it doesn't align with us morally as people, right? So when you're voting, you need to vote with the intention of making this a great country outside of just money and wealth and perceived wealth, because we still have only 3% of our population is wealthy. The majority of the population is poor. They're under the line of poverty, or they're just making it, or they're barely middle class. And as we progress in this state that we are right now with the pandemic and everything that's hit us, to be honest, it's only going to get worse if we don't have people in power who care about people, who care about the people who are going through this. So what we're seeing right now is corporate money being given out. You know what I'm saying? We're seeing handouts to corporations, and usually people say, well, corporations need to keep going because of their employees. But 9 times out of 10, this money does not go to benefiting the employees. It goes to benefiting the CEOs and the hierarchy of companies. You know what I'm saying? There's a trickle down economic in our country. This mentality that if we give the rich a lot, they will then slowly but surely give it to the poor. And what we have seen over and over and over again is that that's not true. And that disenfranchisement is much more likely. That voter suppression is much more likely. That they are more likely to defund schools than they are to defund the police. And granted, that's all up in the air conversations that are confusing to a lot of people because of how much propaganda is all around these kinds of things. It is not radical to want to allocate almost 50% of a budget to other resources to help the people of a state. And that is the thing, is like, we have to get it out of our minds that money is the only thing that matters. We need to get it into our minds that the social well-being of our people, the people who are on the street, who don't have a home for reasons that you do not know, for all of the mothers who are on welfare, who cannot afford to take care of their kids, who can't afford to watch their kids, who can't afford people to watch their kids, but they still got to work every single day, sometimes 3 jobs to make ends meet. Like, those are people's realities in this world. And we have to think about those people when we're voting. We can't just, because a lot of us, especially myself, I'm very privileged to be able to come here and say I can even vote. Very privileged to be able to have the opinions that I have and be able to share them with people like you guys. You know what I'm saying? This communicative relationship is a privilege, to be able to talk about these things and to be able to have a right to have a say. So if you can exercise your right to vote, it is vital that you're voting with your heart this time, not party affiliation, but with your heart. What is it that is going to help my community thrive? What is it that's going to make sure that the most vulnerable person where I live is also just as taken care of as I am? And, there's a lot of rhetoric around why or why not that's a bad way to look at things politically. But again, politics is not just economic. Politics, judges affect people's daily lives. Commissioners affect people's daily lives. It's the difference between whether or not your school is going to have security and funding, or it's just not, and you're going to have to deal with whatever happens, right? And at the end of the day, don't you want control? At least a little bit control. You know what I mean? Don't you want to be able to say, you know what? Actually, I don't agree with this, and I'm aligned more with what's going on over here. And granted, that could be different meanings for all of you. We as a society are taught binaries. We're taught that there's good, bad, Democrat, Republican, black, white. And these are just rigid lines in the sand. There's no undoing them. And that everything gets categorized on this binary scale. We need to start thinking of things as spectrums. You can be anywhere on the scale of where it is you identify, of where it is that you feel aligned with politically, of where it is. There is no rule about you must be this or you must be that. And I think that that's the biggest brainwashing that has happened to most of our youth as well, is that they disempower you and they make you think that you don't have an option, and you have options. And again, voting to me is literally like 2% of this battle, y'all. 2% of the battle to get to where we want to go. And for me, the world that I envision, and I hope all of you envision as well, is a place where we're all taken care of, where there's no more suffering. If we're living in the richest country in the world, why are there children dying? Why do we have high infant mortality rates? Why do we have illiteracy? Why are there so many people in prison who are innocent? Why? You know what I'm saying? Why is that the case? And we have to really look at those whys, and we have to reckon with the whys, and then we have to do better, especially as the youth. We need to do better because we know we want a better world. We know that we go on social media, we see people being mean as hell to each other. We see people like laughing at each other for clout, like making fun of people so that they can get more followers. Like we live in a real nasty space of world right now. And it's up to people like y'all who are civically engaged, who are engaged with your minds, who are engaged with your hearts. We're the people who are going to change the world. You know what I mean? That world that you guys see, because I know you see it too, because we were all given this little implanted vision, okay, of what this world could look like if we all cared about each other, if we created communities that care about each other. It's not whack to care about people. You know, it is not cool to pick someone apart when you're hurting inside, because 99% of the time when you're doing that to somebody is because you don't feel good about who you are. So again, all of this to say, politically, even, you know, get aligned with who you are. Get aligned with what you believe in, not what your parents believe in, not what your friends believe in. You know, you don't have to tell people how you really feel or what you really think. That's your business. It's your privacy. But make sure that whatever it is that you're aligning with, it aligns with your heart and your intentions of who you want to be in this world and what you want to bring to this world. It's so important.
Thank you so much, Lauren. That really, really resonated, I'm sure, with everyone on this call. Also, I'm Jauregui.
Hi.
Really, really excited to have you here. I can't tell you how honored we are, and as is like everyone on our team. I've been listening to you since I was like forever. I mean, you're not, it's too much older than me, but you were
But you know,
just incredible.
thank you, babe.
I wanted to, first off, I thought what you said about just really separating yourself from like the candidate, but really looking into like what are they standing for, just like educating yourself on people is the biggest thing. Cause I know like the first time I voted was my first year, my freshman year of college, and I did not know anyone on the ballot, and I was luckily like mail-in voting so I could look up everybody, but
Literally me. But I didn't even have that. So I didn't even look anybody. I swear, I just was like, okay, check, check, check. I guess. I don't know you.
I was like, I have no idea how I was supposed to do that if I hadn't like been mail-in voting. So I thought that was like a really, really solid piece of advice. Something that I personally wanted to ask you, and then we can, and people feel free to put your questions in the comments. I'm sure you have a ton of them. Oh, not comments. Sorry, we're not on YouTube. In the Q&A. My aspiring YouTube from 6th grade is coming out. But I wanted to ask you, you know, you are the child of immigrants, and so my parents immigrated from India around 30 years ago. And how do you think that that has affected your personal civic engagement journey and how you engage with politics?
Yeah, so actually my grandparents were the immigrants. So my mom and my mom as well. My mom was born in Cuba and she came over to Miami when she was like 1. And my dad was born in Miami. So my grandparents on both sides, though, were full-fledged Cuban, came over here, absolutely didn't know the language, didn't know anything about the society. You know what I'm saying? They came over here, you know, on a whim of a hope of a better life, right? So for me, everybody in America is an immigrant. Whether you have white skin, brown skin, black skin, you are an immigrant, unless you're native, right? We're talking about Native Americans. We're talking about indigenous people who have been here, tribes who have been here for eons before any European settlers came over here. I'm gonna be very frank, right? This is history. So when we talk about immigration, when we talk about, actually, we don't really talk about immigration. We talk at immigrants. We talk at immigrants like they're others. We call them aliens. We call people who are seeking asylum and refuge from wars that we've started or that we've aided, we call them other, as if the entire premise of this country was not built off of the concept of freedom and the concept of autonomy, right? So I guess as far as it goes, like I firmly believe that humans have always had the right to migrate wherever the heck they need to in order to survive. It is absurd for anyone to believe that somebody would leave their home, okay, for any other reason besides that they needed to, for whatever their personal reasons are. It could be violence. It could just be that they didn't like the water. They didn't like the weather. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't have to be too serious why somebody immigrates even. You know, someone doesn't have to be a tragedy in order to be valid in their want to live somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't even think about that when we're traveling as Americans. We just kind of float through the whole world. Our passports are valid everywhere. So we don't even think about what kind of privilege that is to just move through the world, right? There are people who don't have that luxury. There are people who have a lot of odds stacked against them in life, you know? And so making it more difficult for them to find home, to find footing, to find a place to settle and raise their families or make sure their families are safe. Like, it's, to me, it's a crime against humanity to be locking people up in cages for that, taking them away from their kids for that. That is just, it's a full-on crime against humanity. That's my opinion on it.
So now going back, talking about immigrants, growing up in Miami, we are in such a diverse community. So I've noticed in my high school and just being out in the community, there is some kind of lack between civic engagement and the youth. So how did you even become so civically engaged and interested in helping out in Miami? Because, in the music industry, you have such a following, but you're still coming back to Miami, which is so inspiring because we still we're still here. We got a lot of work to do. And it makes me so happy that, you're reposting and about Miami. And I wanted to applaud you on that and just know how that, came to be.
Yeah, well, my mother has always been very civically engaged, and she always taught me the importance of my voice. I'm very lucky and blessed to have that. My mom has always encouraged me to be outspoken. She's always encouraged me to be intelligent, educated about what I'm talking about. My, the women in my family and the men in my family, truly, like, they really emphasized education for me. So I've always been aware of the fact that I need to be involved. You know what I'm saying? And again, as I grow, hmm, there's just this. So the reason I'm staying in Miami, right? The reason that I came back to Miami, the reason that I always stayed politically active in Miami is because Florida is a conservative state. And I am not conservative. Granted, everyone can be what they want to be, but in my opinion, conservative and traditional have been words that are being used right now to kind of perpetuate fascism. And I just don't believe in that. And I believe that Florida has a lot of fascist leaders who are very aligned with that mentality and very aligned with extractive practices and ways to take from the people. I've seen that repeatedly throughout my youth, I've always seen the disenfranchisement or the distrust of government around everyone. You know what I'm saying? So being civically engaged in Florida for me is my attempt to bring a progressive voice to it and bring about, hopefully, a more rounded movement for people who are disenfranchised. Because again, the immigrant communities, the undocumented people, the people who are on food stamps, the people who are on welfare. Those are the people who need our help. And those are the people who are most commonly divested from, because we have this weird mentality where we think people deserve where they are, wherever they are in life, that they deserve that. And we don't consider all of the different obstacles that get people to where they are. Even right now, we're experiencing insane voter suppression from our governor, like insane voter suppression. We have a fund that had to be set up to pay people's debts off in order for them to be able to vote. And then even though there has been millions of dollars raised for this fund, the government is not telling people how much they owe, which is just, it's illegal and unconstitutional, because poll taxes are illegal, because everyone should have a right to access the polls, especially people who have had their rights reinstated by us, the people. Because remember, we voted for these people to have their right to vote back. And then we were ignored, and we were overridden and undermined by our own leaders. Like, we really need to think about that, because even what we say we want, if they don't want that, they're not going to do it. That is not democracy. That is not power of the people for the people. That is corrupt politicians in power who are funded by, first of all, our taxpayer dollars. You pay their salaries. And if you don't pay their salaries yet, your mama pays their salaries, okay? Or your daddy pays their salaries. It's our money paying these people, first of all. And second of all, again, like I said, when you're looking at these people and these politicians and what they're going to be doing, you need to look at who is funding them, who has given them money, who has funded their campaign. If it's not by the people for the people, I guarantee you that the agenda is not going to be by the people for the people. That is one of the most important things, is to differentiate and you're going to see a lot of candidates that look real great. They look really good. They say the right stuff. They take back everything bad they've ever said because they want to be elected. These people care about power, right? So we need to use that as leverage. You care about power? You want to be powerful? Okay, cool. Impress me. Impress me. What are you going to do for me? I'm paying you, right? So what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for my cousins? What are you going to do for my brother and sister? What are you going to do for Lola across the street who lives in a tent? Are you going to take care of her? Do you even care? Because we have, even in Florida, we have a homeless budget. Like, we have a budget for homeless people. That's like, I think 30, I actually don't know the exact number, so I'm not even gonna throw it out there, but we have a budget that's specifically for this. And even then, they do not allocate that money to what it's supposed to be used for, right? So we have to understand those kinds of puppet strings that we have control over if we want.
Thank you so much. That is, I feel like the part that you talked about, just really like when you want something, like hold your politicians accountable to what you want. I think that's like the big
100%.
thing. It's like
They work for us. We pay
sorry?
them. They work for us. We pay them.
Exactly. I remember when I was 16 and I ran my first registration drive, my idea was like, I was like, I can't vote now, but I can vote in 2018. And the whole idea was like, members of Congress, we will be watching because, we are. And I think that's what's so amazing about a lot of our generation. I want to turn quickly to the chat. I know that you have to go, but I do want to make sure that we get some questions in from the chat. The first one I want to pull up is Nova's. I believe Nova actually went to your former high school as well, which is currently there.
Carrollton, right?
Huh?
Carrollton? Was it Carrollton?
Yeah, I went to Carrollton, yeah.
Nova's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Nova, what grade is Nova in?
She is in a junior like me.
Dope.
Yeah, Nova is fantastic. Nova was on the New Voters team this summer, and she was really stellar. So Nova's question is, you said that voting is only 2% of the battle. As citizens, what do you think is the best thing to do to continue our struggle?
All right, let's get into it. So one of the things that I'm being very adamant about during this time specifically, because we're seeing unprecedented things happening in our democracy, in our quote unquote democracy. We're really seeing it exposed for what it is, which is an oligarchy, which is not too fun. We're run by corporations. We're run by corporate interests. That's what's happening right now. That's what we're seeing unfold before us. And that's the trajectory we're on if we don't civically engage, but also if we don't communally engage. So for me, one of the biggest things that you can do is look up local orgs that are doing the work in their communities. So in Miami, you have Engage Miami. They're doing incredible work. You have Catalyst Miami, who's doing incredible work. You have the Miami Dream Defenders, who are doing incredible work. There are multiple mutual aid projects that are going on. There are food scarcity projects that are going on. There are people out here making sure that they're taking care of community. And so if you have the capacity, volunteering your time with those people, looking at what they need help with, donating things to them, or even just talking to the people who lead these spaces or the people who need these spaces to survive. When you really get into your community and you realize the lack that you don't experience, right? Because that's a huge thing for me. It's like politics are very selfish. A lot of people, when they think politics, they think, how is this going to affect me, my money, and my family? And granted, that's valid. You know, we all got to be navigating through life like that. How am I going to be affected? How are my peers going to be affected? How is my well-being going to be affected by this, right? So that's fine. But most of us do not vote from a place of empathy or sympathy for another person's struggle. A lot of us who are privileged especially look down on people on welfare, people who are homeless, people who do not have the means that we have. Again, because as a society, we've deemed these people unfit, unworthy, non-productive, and therefore they don't matter. If they can't contribute to an economy, they don't matter. And that's not true. Human life is precious regardless of what state of place they're in. You can crack open any holy book of any sort and it will tell you the same exact thing. Okay, human life is precious, whether it's productive or not. Okay, there are kids who are starving. There are kids who are depending on these programs that I'm telling you about in order to stay afloat. There are mothers who depend on these things to stay afloat. Lotus House is also an incredible organization. Barnyard, I don't know if they're still around, but they are also incredible. Again, just looking into your community, finding non-government affiliated orgs, preferably grassroots, preferably mutual aid projects, because mutual aid essentially is you reinvesting in community, whether that's via effort or via monetarily providing. You guys support and take care of each other outside of the structures that we've been taught are the only ones that are allowed to take care of us. What happens when your politicians don't care about you? What happens when they don't listen to you? What happens when they're trying to disenfranchise you on a regular basis, right? So that's why I say politics are 2% of it. Voting is 2% of it. And the reason why is because voting is a settler colonial thing. It was set up by the settlers who came here and stole land from indigenous people. It is already a system that invalidates the indigeneity of the people here. It is already a system that targets Black and brown bodies in very atrocious ways, whether that's state violence or the prison industrial complex or the military industrial complex. All of these different things, they literally eat these kids up alive, okay? And so you have disenfranchisement at every turn. And so for me, what that tells me as a critical thinker watching, okay, it tells me the message is we don't care about you. Actually, we only care about corporations. Actually, we get way more upset when property is damaged than when lives are lost. I care a lot more about that, actually, right? Not I'm saying them. I'm them. I'm embodying them. You know what I'm saying? So when that happens, what do? Do we panic? Do we feel helpless? Yes, that's what we've all been doing. We've all been like, what the heck is going on? When are these people gonna care? When are they gonna get their shit together? Like, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, we're just seeing a whole clownery of people going back and forth about shit that doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, these core issues are a result of, again, settler colonial tactics to keep people under power and to keep people in line with their agendas, right? So that's a lot to digest, but I really encourage you to look into it because the way that I see it, the world that we want to see is outside of what we know. The world that we want to see has to be created by us. It doesn't exist. And that's for me is like reforming a system that was built exactly as is. If we keep going on that whole reform method, then we're just going to continue to play in to the same thing. It keeps cycling. You can look back 20 years in history and the same exact things are happening right now that happened then. And then we all are outrageously concerned, like shocked, like, wow, I thought we had progressed. I thought we weren't racist anymore. I really thought that we had this on lock. And at the end of the day, no, we don't. You know, because all of these kinds of things, racism, sexism, all of these things that are fabric, they make up the fabric of our society in America, okay? They're so intertwined with who we are that to call it out is to say you're apolitical. Is to call it out is to say that you are radical. To call it out is to say that you're trying to destabilize what we have going on here, right? And so we can keep on that trajectory, keep thinking that way, keep feeling like that, or we can read, you know, some revolutionary books, and we can open our minds up to the possibility of caring about each other and having leaders who care about us, right? That's not radical. It's really not radical to ask for your government to use your funds to help you out. If you're willing to use my funds to bail out corporations, why can't you bail out Lola? Why can't we help her out? You know, why can't we? We have the money, right? We're rich, quote unquote. So let's do it. Why aren't we taking care of our people then?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think you really brought up a lot of food for thought for people on this call, that people are really, it's definitely a time when a lot of us are being exposed to a lot of different ideas, and it's really important to consider things from all angles. And I think that for me, the biggest thing, with new voters is that, like our generation are the people with like,
The most
we
power
have
right now.
issues that we rally around, and we have, things that we care about. And I just really hope that our generation continues the way that we are going, and, becomes the leaders in the future, and like, makes these, creates change, with the power that we have and in the interest of ourselves. Also, Nova put in the chat that she played softball with Taylor.
Oh my God, how cute. I love that.
I just want to say thank you so much, Lauren. This fellow Lauren, it's like I'm saying myself, this was such an empowering speech. And I especially loved when you talked about, food insecurity and these grassroots orgs. I volunteer at the Overtown Youth Center and
Yes.
food drives because, food insecurity is a big problem. And the fact that you're touching on this is just so eye-opening. And it's really such a kudos to the, the celebrity realm, that you're really taking your time out of, that thing to do this. And I am just so happy you came on the call, and you really just inspired me even more, and you inspired all these attendees, and you are just stellar. And thank you again.
I'm a reflection of you, honey.
Oh, think in one sentence, could you sum up why, given all of this important food for thought you've given us, like why is it important for us to vote and show up, just so that we can push that out and make everyone aware. This is what Lauren says.
Yeah, quick
so
question.
just as youth, it is incredibly important to be civically involved, because we have the biggest voice right now. We have the potential to realize what we want to see in the world. And again, granted, it's gonna take more than just this if we want to really push for a world that we want. But this is a huge part of it, especially right now. So educate yourselves.
Thank you so much. It has been an absolute honor to have you on this call. I know I've learned a ton, and I'm sure everyone here has as well. Everyone on our Facebook Live, everyone, watching is just so inspired by you. And I know that I will continue to follow you on all your socials and see what you're up to, and listen to your new songs as they come out as well.
Yes.
Literally holding back.
They're coming, I promise. Beautiful. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it. You guys, are the power, okay? Know your power. I love you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much.